And on top of that, like, it's hard enough right now.
Exactly. So
stuff is hard.
Exactly. So it's
everything feels very volatile right now. Why you gotta make volatility where there's supposed to be humor?
Yeah. So, but tell us why, because the family that you guys represent is now kind of the iconic African American family,
and also the iconic American family,
at the same time. That used to be the Cosby. That used to be the Huxtables.
Yeah.
And now that is no longer a viable project. So you got a double.
This is one of the interesting things. There was a wonderful article written in the New York Times about Cosby. And there's this sense of cleaving, like this separation that has to occur. Do the Cosbys still exist without that? As the Cosby Show, it's the same,
Listen, you are in that role now for a whole generation of people. Mm-hmm. Your family is the iconic black family.
Yeah.
When the Cosby thing came down, how did it hit you? I mean, because you're also a big leader in Me Too. That's just something I've been curious about. How do you process this thing?
I don't know that in all honesty, I'm still processing it, and I don't know that I have a desire to process it publicly.
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that.
Leave it at that. Mm-hmm. Well, so look, I just wanted that some other issues that you've taken on with humor and grace are important issues. You've taken on policing. You've taken on
the show, yes, and
show.
Not me. So not me. We have taken on a lot of heavy issues, very important topics, along with separation and divorce, but postpartum, police brutality, the election, even our parents' generation going to the doctor, so many different, the sex talk, like all of these different things that if you were to line them up, you would not think our show is a comedy.
Yeah, but
I think it does work. But
Why?
I think that's also. I think it's incredible writing. I think we have incredible writing, and there's a daringness and a courageousness with which they lean in. And I think it's a character-driven comedy. The way I always describe it is it's like, this is a show about a family, and it's a show about a family first and foremost. And then we take these things that are on the wallpaper of our lives and drop them in the middle of the floor in the kitchen. And we see how this family is going to either walk around, trip over, decide to explain what's on the floor. Like, how are they going to make sense of this thing that all of us are dealing with? These are things that are sort of all over.
I've never seen anybody deal with the postpartum depression thing. Why is that so important to take on?
I thought it was really important because I've never seen it taken on, because it's not an experience I have had, because it's not an experience I know a lot about, and I also think it is a stigmatized thing.
Very much.
Mental illness within the black community, which we touched on, and in general, but within the black community is not something that there's a lot of language for. There's not a lot of support and resource for. And so it was really important to pull that apart in a way. And what I loved in the way they handled it was there was no eye rolling, you're making too much of this from the husband. There was this loving couple sort of trying to understand something they didn't understand, trying to make sense of something that they didn't understand together. And it is the reason that it's so hard that this couple is going through trouble.
The show somehow manages to be hysterically funny in dealing with this stuff, and it's brilliant. Your mom, she is an icon.
I like to call her an international treasure.
Yeah, but it's amazing. But now, and you used to, for a long time in our community, you were her little girl. You were her daughter.
I don't think that'll ever change.
You're now a star in your own right.
Oh, that's
You really are a star in your own right. And there's some younger people who may not even know about your mom. They know about you. They know about this family. This family's important to them. What advice did your mom give you when you first came into this business? You got somebody who's still a global icon. She must have told you something. What'd she tell you?
She told me a lot of things. I think the most incredible stuff that I learned from my mother was through the experience of watching her. There's a way that my mom navigates her life and her own beingness and experience that is, as a reflection, empowering and gives me the courage to make my own choices and live my own life as I would.
I can have my fantasies about what that would be, but what did you observe her do?
Well, my mother is a businesswoman.
Yeah.
She is, for example, always on time, which for her means 10 minutes early. She's prepared. My mom has always handled like Herculean tasks while being a full-time mother, a full-time single mother. And I never heard my mom look at me or one of my siblings and say, not now, I don't have time. My mom, we would leave the house every morning and she would say things like, make a new friend today. And I remember by senior year, I was like, seriously, Mom? I know everybody in the school, okay? There's no new friend to make.
I know the custodian.
She's like, she's like, I know everybody by name. I'm like, I know everybody by name. And then she would say things like, fine, then do your best today. I mean, but my mom, for example, my mom would say things like, when our grades would come or whatever, my mom would say things like, before having an opinion herself, because I know she would have her opinion, she would say things like, did you do your best? Which, let me tell you something. As a child, you know when you didn't.
Exactly. That truth serum.
Oh,
that truth serum is right in your eyes.
When you are your own worst critic,
yeah.
And that is the worst. I also remember her. This was a big lesson she taught us. My sister and I would fight all the time. My older sister and I were really close in age, and she would sit us down on a couch together. She would never allow us to stay in the argument, and she would make us sit there together until we could apologize authentically and say, I love you. And then we would have to go into her room and show her us saying we were sorry and that we loved each other. And if she didn't believe it, if it didn't feel authentic, we'd have to go right back. So, those are some of the lessons that I got.
So that's not black girl magic. That's like black girl sorcery. I mean, that's like some major stuff.
As I like to say, it's the reality that makes us magic. It's how real we are that makes that magic possible.
Everybody wants to talk with you about your mom. Your mom, in the 60s wasn't politically outspoken. She wasn't walking around with the fist in the air.
Well, the experience of being in what she was living,
that's right,
and being who she was being, boldly being who she was being, lovingly and compassionately being who she was being, in and of itself was a form of activism if you think of the times that she was in and the experiences that she obviously went through.
Absolutely. However, you are a much more outspoken person. What is her view, now, in your celebrity moment, you're Me Too, you've spoken up on so many different issues.
Time's up more than Me Too.
Okay, time's up. What is your mom's view of you being such an outspoken activist?
I will tell you that my mother, my mommy was so proud after my TED Talk. Both my TED Talk and the Glamour Women of the Year talk. My mom knows that I speak that way. My mom knows how I feel about things. She knows my outspokenness. She's been my mom for 45 years. I think I was probably hammering on her belly when I was in there trying to say stuff or go shopping. I don't know.
Or both.
But she was incredibly proud. I think she's also just proud because I have found a sense of self and a sense of selfhood and a sense of happiness and joy that is what you hope for your children.
Yeah. Was there ever a moment when you were maybe a student activist at Brown or whatever where you're like...
No, my activism is very recent.
It's very recent?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think my activism really sort of...
Why now?
Because everybody needs to use their voices right now, okay? Which is part of the fertility of this moment.
Yes.
Is that, the tendency with how volatile and scary and appalling and understandably and justifiably terrifying it is, but the opportunity and the invitation truly is to lean into the compassion and the grace and the activism. That's my...
But in this TED Talk, I mean, it's an extraordinary TED Talk, and if people haven't seen it, they should go out of the way to do so.
Please do.
But you talk about, you aren't talking about the compassion as much, you're also talking about the fact that women have a right to be furious and to own the fury. Now, that is a very tricky tightrope for a black woman to walk.
Of course.
Because it's always all women are too emotional and black women are too angry. So how do you deal with the compassion and the fury? Talk to me about that.
Well, I mean, the paradigm within patriarchy is that men are dumb and women are crazy, right? Well, I say BS. I don't think men are dumb. I think that there's a culture that has supported them in being dumb, and I don't think women are crazy. And I think that there is a much more complex, nuanced pool that we are all swimming in. The fury is justified, and I think you could replace women or race into that same conversation, which I discuss. But what I do in the talk, which is really what I have been chomping on, is connecting the innocuous to the horrific, and that there is a spectrum there that we live within, and one makes space for the other. And on top of that, the invitation at the end is really what is the important part, which is the invitation for men, calling men in to this conversation, to this dialogue, and to this movement, this large-scale women's movement that is going on, to say there is a way for you to be in support of women and to be of service to the change that is occurring as we all together create what we are envisioning, that we don't know what that is. We haven't lived in it. And for Fury, with Fury, I think the invitation is not to push it away because we're trained to smile and be appropriate and gracious all the time, but instead to look at it, to learn safe ways and in safe places to express it, and to actually listen to it.
When we're always trying to push it down, it comes out
in very weird side ways, like, through your neck.
We don't want no neck fury.
No, and sometimes, you know what? We're human beings. Sometimes that occurs. Yep. But as people of color, as black and brown people, your fury, if it comes out the wrong way, there are very real consequences.
If there's one person who I think we are both in competition to be the president of our fan club, and it's Michelle Obama.
Oh, yeah.
And is that like a religious, like,
I love me some Michelle Obama. She's amazing. For me, I felt like she started a dialogue that had not been opened. To have a black woman, to have her name be preceded by lady and first, in and of itself. I heard Michaela Angela Davis say that, and I mean, it just reverberated through me. In and of that, that held something and made me, I mean, the two of them just, stand up a little taller. But there is a way that she is extraordinary in her ordinariness, that she holds, I mean, and you've met her. She literally makes you want to bow. Like, it's like weird.
So you just want to stand up really straight.
You just kind of want to be like, yes, ma'am. Like a little curtsy and like a, you know what I mean? Like there's like some regalness to her that is not only because of her stature and her height. But she also, I think of the speech that she made after that moment during the election.